Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled People stories. In this video, a rival business owner set my store on fire claiming I stole her customers. Let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. Everyone has that one thing, the thing that they consider their physical signature, like some people wear pearls or have piercing, and well, my thing is nails. I absolutely adore everything about nails and I always have. I remember being 5 years old and watching my mom paint my toenails with so much affection. It was always clear to me how this simple act of self-care can make a person feel really great, so when I reached my senior year of high school and all my friends were going off to college, I only had one plan for my future, and it was nails. I'd always been great in art class, but I knew the truth of a career in art would be a lot of struggles. Learning the art of doing nails would allow me to make art and money all at once. It was the perfect marriage of my skills and reality. I went to nail tech school and did really well. All my classmates were in awe of the details and creativity I put into every set of nails I completed. I had a solid client list before I even finished school. Plus I set up socials to show off the nails I was doing and they were exploding. My nails were trendy, unique and artfully done, and it turned out people were willing to pay for that. Within 1 year of finishing school, I had saved enough to open my own nail salon. I was determined to make my salon stand out and I knew my artsy style would be the key. I hired other nail techs who worked with just as much artist flair as I did. The goal was to build a salon known in equal measure for taking care of our clients as well as pushing the envelope in beauty. And I did. My salon was so successful that we turned a profit in just a year, we were written up by multiple local journals and we won the title of Best Nail Salon in a publicly voted contest. It seemed like there was no limit to how far my dream could go until the worst happened. I started having confrontations with another local nail salon owner. This woman was much older than me and her shop paled in comparison to mine. Hers was what we call in the business a chop shop. They were known for fast, cheap manicures that would chip or peel within the day. She did not have a single employee who could execute nail art like me and my team, yet she decided to start a beef. Honestly, I did not even consider her competition before she started harassing me. Her nails were cheaply executed and they didn't have the style or flair that my shop is known for. None of that mattered to her. Her mind fixated on me as a threat and she was willing to go to any length to hurt my business. The nightmare began when she started stirring the pot on social media. She started leaving anonymous bad reviews on the salon's page. At first, she was neither clever nor discreet because she posted from her personal page. Eventually, though, she began making dummy profiles just to leave more nasty comments and reviews. She even had her employees leave negative commenting on our posts. It was so childish. I couldn't believe that this woman was not only almost a decade older than me, but had been in business for years. I operated my life and my business under a code of ethics and I would never trash a competitor to bring myself up. Still, she pushed the childish behavior even further. She had a pair of employees that she would pay to lurk out front of my salon handing out coupons for hers. She would give my customers discounts just to try her salon instead. I even caught one offering to give one of my customers a 50% discount and a free ride over to the other nail salon. It was just insane. Luckily, my loyal clients stayed true through it all, so the business was still doing okay. I, on the other hand, was at my wit's end with my competitors' immature behavior. I swore to myself that the next time she showed up at the salon, I would call the police and report her for harassment. Sadly, I never got the chance because the next time I saw her, she was burning my salon to the ground. I told my manager that I was going on a supply run. While I was gone, one of the young techs from my competitor's salon came in for a manicure. She must have been a new hire because my staff did not recognize her. They brought her back and got to work, not knowing that was all part of their ruthless plan. My shop is not very big, it has a reception area with bathrooms and then through a door is the main salon space along with a small supply room. The only two people working that day were my manager and a single nail tech. The tech was busy with the faux client and my manager was doing inventory in the supply room. This left the reception area unmanned for a brief time. During this short window, the owner of the competing salon snuck into the empty reception area, went to the bathroom. In the bathroom, she placed a remote-controlled incendiary device in the trash can, buried it in the trash, and got out. She must have had the detonator on her because a moment later, my manager smelled smoke. By the time I returned from my supply run, the entire salon storefront was engulfed in flames. It brought me to my knees to see all my dreams burning to ashes before my eyes, but all things considered, we were very fortunate. Everyone in the salon got out safely and the fire department arrived quick enough to stop the flames from spreading to other shops in our strip. It was a literal nightmare come to life. The entire reception area was charred to ruins. The flames reached a display of sample polishes which were all burnt, the waiting couches and our POS were all burnt too, and walking through the damaged ruins of my shop felt like taking 40 lashes. Everywhere I looked, my dreams sat before me in cinders. My saving grace was that my crazy firebug of a competitor never even accounted for our basic security system. We have cameras in all areas of the salon, so everything she did that day was caught on camera. The camera saw her sneak in and go into the bathroom. It also caught smoke seeping under the bathroom door shortly thereafter. The fire department brought an arson inspector, but the video made the case open and shut. Within 12 hours of the fire, they were able to apprehend the woman at her nail salon, and in a fortunate twist of fate, they even found her conspirator too. They charged the nail salon owner with conspiracy to commit arson and destruction of property. Her cohort was also charged with conspiring to commit arson. Neither woman was able to post bail, so they both stayed in jail awaiting sentencing. Waiting for the sentencing seemed to take ages, yet it gave me comfort knowing that they were behind bars. I've never been as heartbroken as I was the day my shop went up in flames, and I was desperate to feel like justice was served. I was barely sleeping. Every morning I would go down to the shop to oversee repairs while the only thought on my mind was that horrible woman. Finally, the day of her sentencing arrived. I dressed up and went to the courthouse to see justice being served firsthand. When the bailiff marched her into the courtroom, she looked terrible. Her hair hung limply around her face and her snide smile was replaced by a forlorn look. I hate to admit it, but as a beauty professional, seeing her looking so torn up felt good. She had messed with the wrong salon and she was learning just how ugly the consequences would be. The judge announced her case was up and I sat at attention. While her charges were read, I felt like I could not breathe. Her guilty plea was repeated and the judge called out her sentence. On the charges of conspiring to commit arson and willful destruction of property, the state finds you guilty. The state sentenced you to 2 years in prison and 2 additional years of supervision. You are also to pay for the damages to the tune of $50,000, said the judge. It felt like a giant weight was lifted off my chest. She was going away for a long time and she would not be able to harm me or my business from behind bars. I felt so relieved. Repairing my shop and recovering the business would take some time. Knowing that I could do so without her threats and harassment was a gift. I left the courthouse and went home. I stood in front of my closet of nail supplies, forever debating what to do until it eventually came to me. I grabbed polish in red, orange, yellow, green, blue and purple. I did a beautiful set of nails with tiny rainbows breaking through the clouds because the storm was over. I could finally see the rainbow. And yeah, Ripestars, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment because that would help me tremendously. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. So for context, I'm a pastor in a large denomination that takes years to become fully recognized or ordained as a clergy person. There are several interviews with different teams to see if a person is fit to serve. When this story occurred, I was already past 4 steps and working on the last and final step to be ordained. Part of this step required recording and submitting a sermon on one of only a set number of biblical texts, and sermons using outside texts would not be accepted. At the time, I was an associate pastor in a relatively large church, almost 1,000 folks on a Sunday between multiple services, and I was initially hired to be one of the primary preachers. However, the senior pastor would set the sermon series, sermon topics, and scriptures for each Sunday. We were asked to stay on theme and on topic for any service in which we preached. Soon after I arrived at this church, the senior pastor, who had been there for many years, announced their retirement. An interim would take their place until the next long-term pastor was selected. We will call this interim pastor Richard. The first time I met with Pastor Richard, after the former pastor's retirement and his start, he told me that he didn't think I had what it took to be a pastor. He then proceeded to strip me of nearly all my pastoral responsibilities. Prior to his arrival, I regularly preached 3 or 4 Sundays a month and was called for visits and oversaw the sacraments. After the meeting with Pastor Richard, I was relegated to organizing a team of 125 volunteers, ensuring we had liturgists, ushers, greeters, and parking lot attendants. My preaching was also cut to just once a month at best, and even though I was working on my paperwork for the final step towards ordination, Pastor Richard refused to schedule any of the biblical texts required for the sermon for my ordination paperwork. To his credit, he did say that I could use whatever verses from the Bible that I wanted, so as long as I stayed on theme for the sermon and series. However, I refuse to bend to scripture to say something that it doesn't. If a text is about forgiveness, I won't try and proof text it to make it fit a theme of justice. Somehow, every time I was scheduled to preach, the theme of the sermon did not fit any of the handful of texts I was allowed to preach for my paperwork. For anyone curious, it was also a requirement that the sermon be delivered in the church you were serving at the time, meaning I could not fill in for someone else in order to complete the task. Eventually, Pastor Richard's interim tenure was drawing to a close. There was one Sunday between his departure and the next senior pastor's arrival. That Sunday was not part of a sermon series and did not have a selected theme, it was preacher's choice. This would have been perfect because I could get at least one sermon recorded for my paperwork to submit. Usually you would want to record all of the text so that you could choose the best one of the group. However, I was not scheduled as one of the preachers for any of the services. The two scheduled preachers for Sunday were Greg and Sarah. Greg was not a pastor and was not on track to become a pastor, so I went to Pastor Richard and asked if I could take Greg's place so that I could record at least one sermon for submission for ordination. Richard told me that I couldn't switch with Greg and he wouldn't allow me to take his place. I agreed that I would not take Greg's place and left his office. Shortly after I left Richard's office, I went over and met with Sarah. I knew she wanted that particular weekend off. So I offered to switch preaching assignments. I would take the weekend I wanted and she would switch for a weekend a month down the line. Sarah immediately agreed and I went to the person who sent out our weekly email and had the information switched. I didn't ask permission and I didn't tell Richard what I had done. The email went out on Wednesday night and on Thursday morning when Richard came in, the first thing he did was come into my office. He demanded to know why I disobeyed his order. I simply pointed out that he told me I couldn't preach in Greg's place, which I wasn't. Instead, I should preach in Sarah's place. There wasn't much he could do because the information had already been sent out to the church, so he left my office in a rage. I preached on Sunday using one of the required texts and used it to submit for the final step in my ordination. Unfortunately, I was not ordained that year. It would take me another year beyond that. But the look on his face when he realized I had followed his order to the letter and there was nothing he could do about it still makes me chuckle years later. And yeah, Ripestars, I gotta say, I don't think I've read many Malicious Compliance church stories so far. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this one. The next one is a Malicious Compliance at Work story. So this beautiful country of ours has a fairly low population density generally for reasons dating back to the infamous famine. Watch Black 47 for reference. It also, however, has layer upon layer of civil servants and bureaucracy. We got a beautiful system of government where we have 2 houses and a representative for every 30,000 people as a fact of law. Underneath that, we have a local government system with local authorities in each county and city, each with their own elected councillors and administration. Planning, fire safety and roads are administered by these local councils, which lead to the public service being the largest employers in the country. All in all, an island with a southern republic that with an area of 26,000 square miles with at the time about 31 or 32 local authorities and a population of around 5.5 million plus or minus. So basically it's totally over the top, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyhow, while working for one such local authority as a senior executive engineer, SEE, a fire officer, my good friend, an extremely intelligent civil engineer, had the misfortune of being gifted with a new boss, a spanking clean brand new in-box county engineer in his first role in that position. Full of the proverbial PS and vinegar. Now this particular county was landlocked by other counties and is a particularly odd shape with a brand new motorway going through it. There are many parts of the county that the only way to get to by road is through other counties, and this is important. Most staff use their own cars, and once a month you filled out your mileage sheet, sent it to your direct line manager for sign-off, who sent it up the chain and claimed it back at a rate of so much per mile. It was often a nice addition to the paycheck and more than covered the cost of maintaining and running the vehicle. If you crossed your LA's boundary, you had to fill out another sheet explaining why and get it signed off by your line manager. Under their previous boss, they had devised a system where no one had to bother with the mileage sheets necessarily on a monthly basis and could let it slide for a few months and then submit them all together and get a nice bonus in one lump, nice if you had a special occasion or a holiday coming up. An easy savings plan, if you will. No one bothered with the second sheet because you crossed a boundary so many times a week that they became irrelevant. Q, my new boss's arrival, who insisted on doing everything by the book, didn't like the way that things worked previously and was gonna sort it all out, straighten out everything and kick everyone into line. He called everyone into a meeting, explained what he was doing in his best authoritative manner, and insisted on monthly submittal of all expenses and mileage sheets and everything listed down to the finest detail, including reasons for your trips, etc. And they had to be fully explained and in detail, otherwise the mileage sheets would be sent back unsigned. My friend and the rest of the staff went away from the meeting wondering how they were gonna deal with this new way of working. After a few days stewing, my friend came up with a solution to the issue and then called his workmates. They had a little discussion amongst themselves about how to deal with things and came up with a plan for petty revenge. Everyone under the direction of the new boss found that the extreme ends of the county is where they were needed to work that month. The staff then slightly redesigned all of their trips so that they crossed county boundaries multiple times a day, 6 days a week. At the end of month 1, this plan culminated with the submission of thousands of permission confirmation sheets to cross the county boundary to be signed by the new CE after his first month. It took him over 4 weeks to get through that batch, and on week 4, after receiving the second month's batch, all the senior staff were called into a meeting, the agenda of which was kept very hush-hush. The only thing that ever came out of that meeting was a quiet word from the senior staff that everything was going back to the way it used to work, a perfect teaching moment and petty revenge combined. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. It was Remembrance Sunday. Everyone was gathered at the cenotaph in Westminster to pay their respects to those who gave their lives in service of their country. Me and my dad were standing in the crowd. We were both wearing dark suits. My dad had his war medals pinned to his chest. I had my granddad's Victoria Cross medal in my pocket as I wanted to have a part of him with us while we paid our respects. After what was a very emotional ceremony for my dad, who had reconnected with some old soldier friends, we headed to Starbucks for some lunch. We arrived and noticed that there was a long table at the end that was occupied by current members and veterans of all the different armed forces. We placed our order for 2 coffees and 2 sandwiches and a slice of cake. It came to around £11. As I was opening up Apple Pay on my phone, the barista noticed my police warrant card hanging from my suit pocket and my dad's medals. He smiled at us and said, "That will be exactly £0. It's on the house for both of you. It will be ready shortly." We thanked him and moved to the end of the counter to wait for our lunch. My dad starts talking to some other veterans when I see a man, probably in his late 30s, shouting at the barista. A little girl is behind him sobbing. He is being so loud everyone can hear exactly what he is saying. ED: "What do you mean I have to pay? You gave those 2 their food for free. You did the same for that group before them. I need it for free. What makes them so special? My daughter is hungry and I've left my wallet in my car." Barista: "If you're a member of the armed forces or emergency services, then I can give it to you for free today, but I need to see ID. ED: "Yeah, of course. I'm a soldier. I'm in the army. Now, can I have my free food?" Barista: "Really? What regiment? Where's your MOD 90 or veterans card?" For those who don't know, MOD 90 is UK military ID. ED: My what?" Barista: "If you're a soldier, then you would know instantly what that is and you should have it on you at all times. Also, your haircut is crap and totally not regulation. Finally, no one as fat as you would be allowed to join the army. You would not last 1 day at training. You would bust a gut just walking up the stairs." ED: "How dare you? You don't know anything about being a soldier. I wanna see your manager. Now." Barista: "I'm an army reservist. Here's my ID. I think I know exactly what I'm talking about." He pulls out his ID from his wallet and holds it up before putting it back. "Now to pay, will that be card, cash or Starbucks card?" ED goes really pale and looks embarrassed. He dragged his daughter out without saying another word. I lean over the counter and extend my hand to the barista and shake it. Me: "Mate, that was epic. You totally owned that wanker. Good job." Barista: "Yeah, it just makes me angry that people actually stoop to that level. He deserves to go to hell." We continued to have a chat until another customer walked in the door. Me and my dad collected our food and sat down at a table. As today is Remembrance Day, I ask that those who read this just take a moment to remember the sacrifices that people made to make this world a better place, but now to finish with a quote. "On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when the guns fell silent, we will remember." And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripestories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.